Picture the scene. A pod of orcas glides through open water, moving with the quiet arrogance of animals that have never lost a fight. They have torn great white sharks in half. They have drowned blue whales, the largest creatures that ever existed. They have chased down dolphins, seals, moose swimming between islands, and even other whales twice their size. Nothing in the ocean makes them hesitate. Nothing except the shape that suddenly appears on their sonar in the distance. A long, blocky silhouette, a square head, a slow, deliberate movement, an adult sperm whale. And here is where something strange happens. The most fearless hunters on the planet slow down. They circle, they stall, they start calculating, and then, more often than not, they leave. This is not a story people expect. In the natural world, we assume predators either attack or ignore. We do not usually associate them with something as human as fear. But if you spend enough time studying orca behavior around adult sperm whales, a pattern emerges that is very hard to explain any other way. Something about this animal, this slow, wrinkled, deep-diving giant, tells the emperors of the ocean to walk away from an easy-looking meal. The obvious first question is why, and the obvious first guess is size. So let us start there, because it is where most people stop. An adult female sperm whale stretches around 36 to 40 feet, roughly 11 to 12 meters, and weighs somewhere between 15 and 20 tons. An adult male is on a completely different scale. He can reach 55 feet or more and push past 55 to 60 tons of dense muscle, bone, and blubber. Compare that to an orca. Even the biggest bull orcas top out around 20 to 25 feet and 8 or 9 tons. So on paper, a male sperm whale can be 6 to 7 times heavier than the orca hunting him. That is a serious difference. But size is a lazy explanation, because orcas do not shy away from big animals. They shy away from dangerous ones. A blue whale can weigh 150 tons, 3 times the mass of a large male sperm whale, and orcapods still take them down. If it were only about weight, sperm whales would be a soft, easy meal. Something else is happening, and to understand it, we have to look at what the orca sees when it studies its target. Orcas are not brute force hunters, they are strategists. Every attack is a spreadsheet in motion. Calories gained, calories spent, injury risk, time invested. If any of those numbers look wrong, the pod aborts. This is why orcas often ignore easier prey and pursue harder targets. They are not chasing hunger, they are chasing profit. And when they run the numbers on a sperm whale, the spreadsheet turns red. The first reason is behavioral. Most large whales, when they see orcas, do the same thing. They run. Blue whales, fin whales, minke whales, and humpbacks in open water. Their entire survival strategy is built on outrunning or outlasting the predator. Their bodies are streamlined for it. Their instincts scream for it. And orcas have spent millions of years learning to exploit exactly that response. They know how to turn a fleeing whale into an exhausted whale, and an exhausted whale into a dead one. Sperm whales did not read that script. When an orca pod appears, adult sperm whales do the opposite of every other giant in the ocean. They stop, they gather, they turn to face the threat directly, and in that single decision, they break the entire orca playbook. Think about what an orca hunt actually requires. It requires movement. It requires a target that panics and burns energy. It requires isolation, exhaustion, and eventually suffocation, as the prey is held under the surface. None of that works against an opponent who calmly plants itself in the water and stares back. You cannot outlast something that is not running. You cannot separate something that refuses to leave the group. You cannot drown something that is stronger than you in every physical category that matters up close. And this is where the sperm whale's real weapons come out. Let us start with the head. If you have ever looked at a sperm whale from the side, you know how strange it appears. Roughly a third of its entire length is a single, enormous, block-shaped forehead. It is one of the most distinctive silhouettes in the animal kingdom. Most people assume that a giant head is mostly brain. It is not. The sperm whale does have the largest brain of any creature that has ever lived, weighing around 17 to 20 pounds, but that brain sits in a small pocket at the back of the skull. The rest of that vast chamber is filled with something else, something that has fascinated scientists for over a century. It is called the spermaceti organ, a dense, waxy, oil-filled structure that can hold hundreds of gallons of a liquid that shifts states depending on temperature. Warm, it flows like thin oil. Cool, it thickens into a solid mass. And the sperm whale can control that transition by regulating the blood flow around it. In effect, this animal carries a variable weight, variable density club at the front of its body. When it wants to strike, it can turn its own head into something closer to a wrecking ball than a skull. If that sounds exaggerated, history has already provided the proof. In 1820, an American whaling ship called the Essex was working in the South Pacific when it made the mistake of harpooning members of a sperm whale group. What happened next terrified the sailors so badly that survivors talked about it for the rest of their lives. A large male sperm whale broke off from the pod, turned, and charged the ship at full speed. He struck the hull with his head, then he circled back and did it again. The Essex, a solidly built vessel of roughly 240 tons of oak and iron, cracked, flooded, and sank. That single incident inspired the novel Moby-Dick and permanently changed how sailors thought about sperm whales. Now translate that force into an underwater collision with an orca, a 60-ton mass moving at high speed, ramming with a reinforced forehead, delivering an impact that can crack a wooden warship. The orca's ribs, spine, and skull are not built for that. One clean hit is potentially fatal. Even a glancing blow can end a hunter's career, and a career-ending injury for a wild orca is a death sentence, because it can no longer hunt. The front of a sperm whale is a no-go zone. Every orca that grows up in a pod eventually learns this, or dies learning it. But maybe the smarter approach, from an orca perspective, is to avoid the front and go after weaker members of the group. That is exactly what orcas do with almost every other whale species. They target calves. They wear the mothers down. They isolate the young. It is a proven, effective strategy. Against sperm whales, it collapses almost immediately. The reason lies in how sperm whale families are built. These are some of the most tightly bonded social animals on the planet. Adult females stay together for life, sometimes across multiple generations of the same family line. Calves are raised communally. Females who are diving deep for food take turns, while others stay near the surface with the young. And when danger arrives, they do not scatter. They lock into a formation that biologists have named the marguerite or the rosette. Picture a wheel with the calves at the center. The adult females position themselves around the young, and here is the crucial detail. They do not point their heads outward. They point their tails outward, because the tail of a sperm whale is not a passive fin. It is a slab of muscle capable of delivering strikes with staggering force. Each fluke can generate enough impact to snap bone, rupture organs, and end an orca's participation in the hunt permanently. Approach the outside of that circle, and you meet a wall of moving tails. Every angle is defended. Every gap closes as fast as it opens. Orcas that have encountered this formation tend to hang back at a distance, sometimes circling for hours, waiting for a mistake that never comes, and eventually, they leave. Because there is no gap to exploit. There is no calf to isolate. There is no exhausted mother. Just a rotating fortress of muscle that would happily trade a few bruises for one of their lives. But this raises another question. What about a single sperm whale? What about a lone animal caught away from its pod? Surely then the orcas would strike. And this is where the sperm whale reveals its final defensive layer, and it is one no other large whale can match. It goes down. Orcas are creatures of the sunlit ocean. Their bodies are built for the top few hundred meters of the sea, They can dive deeper if they have to, but they do not linger there. Their lungs, their heart rates, and their oxygen budgets, all of it is tuned for shallow, high-energy work. Most hunting happens within a few hundred feet of the surface. Push past 1,000 feet, and orcas start to struggle. Push further, and the pressure becomes hostile. Sperm whales live in a completely different world. They are among the deepest diving mammals on the planet, routinely descending past 3,000 feet, and often reaching depths of 6,500 feet or more in search of squid. Some dives have been recorded well beyond 7,000 feet. Their bodies are engineered for it. Their ribs collapse safely. Their oxygen is stored in muscle tissue with a chemistry that no orca comes close to matching. They can hold their breath for over an hour. An orca gets maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So when a lone sperm whale finds itself under pressure at the surface, it does not fight. It does not run horizontally. It simply tilts down and disappears. The orcas can follow for a while, but as they descend, their bodies begin to fight them. Pressure builds. Oxygen thins. The hunt becomes a survival problem for the hunters. Meanwhile, the sperm whale drifts calmly into the black, into a domain that is not just uncomfortable for orcas, but potentially lethal. You cannot kill what you cannot reach. The abyss is the sperm whale's sanctuary, and it is a door only they can open. Now, we have been talking mostly about females and family groups, but the picture changes dramatically when you look at adult males, because male sperm whales live a very different life. Once they hit maturity, they leave the family pods and spend most of their years alone, wandering colder waters, sometimes near the poles, hunting the deepest and largest prey the ocean has to offer. And these males are simply on another level. An adult male sperm whale is not a scaled-up female. He is a different animal. He is roughly twice as long and 3 to 4 times heavier than a female. He is a solo predator by nature, unafraid of tackling colossal squid in total darkness, wrestling animals with tentacles longer than a school bus in pitch-black water at crushing depths. He does not travel in a defensive circle because he does not need one. He is, in every meaningful sense, the fortress. And here is where the paradox becomes almost absurd. Orcas will attack a 150-ton blue whale, but they will not attack a 55-ton adult male sperm whale. On paper, it looks like a downgrade in difficulty. In reality, it is the opposite. A blue whale is a passive filter feeder, a living cargo ship full of nutrients. A male sperm whale is a lifelong predator with a battering ram head, a slab-like tail, teeth the size of bananas, and instincts refined by hunting monsters in the dark. There is no confirmed record of orcas successfully killing a healthy adult male sperm whale in the wild. Not one. Marine biologists have looked. The evidence is not there. Even the physical act of biting a sperm whale is a problem. Their blubber is extraordinarily thick, up to 14 ins, or about 35 centimeters, of dense, fibrous tissue that behaves more like reinforced rubber than fat. An orca's teeth, sharp as they are, only reach a few inches. To do meaningful damage, orcas would need to bite continuously for hours, tearing away layer after layer, while the sperm whale thrashes, rams, and dives. It is a cost-benefit disaster. The energy spent, the injuries risked, and the time invested vastly outweigh the calories at the end. But there is one more piece to this puzzle, and it is the piece that ties everything together, because the sperm whale's defenses do not really make sense as a response to orcas alone. They are too extreme, too overbuilt. The head is too dense. The blubber is too thick. The pod tactics are too refined. These are not the adaptations of an animal that evolved to handle killer whales. These are the adaptations of an animal that evolved to survive something far worse. To find that something, you have to go back millions of years, to the Miocene, when the oceans were ruled by predators that make modern orcas look modest. The megalodon patrolled these waters, a shark the size of a school bus, weighing tens of tons, with jaws that could crush the ribs of most whales alive today. But even more relevant was a creature called Leviathan melvilli, a prehistoric ancestor of the sperm whale lineage, itself a massive predatory whale with teeth over a foot long, built specifically to hunt other large whales. This was not a filter feeder. This was a killer, and it lived in the same seas as the ancestors of the modern sperm whale. The sperm whale we see today is descended from animals that survived those seas. Their bodies were shaped by encounters we can barely imagine. Every trait we admire in them, the density, the tail power, the ramming head, the tight social bonds, the deep diving reflex, was refined in a world where the alternative was extinction. So when a modern orca pod shows up, the sperm whale is not looking at the apex predator of the age. It is looking at a lightweight version of threats its ancestors already learned to defeat. This is why sperm whales do not panic. Their stress response is calibrated for monsters that no longer exist. An orca, from a sperm whale's evolutionary perspective, is a manageable problem. And that composure is contagious. When one adult stays calm, the pod stays calm. When the pod stays calm, the formation holds. When the formation holds, the orcas have nowhere to strike. So the question we started with, do orca pods actually fear adult sperm whales, has a more layered answer than a simple yes or no. Orcas are not afraid in the human emotional sense. They do not sit awake at night thinking about sperm whales, but their behavior tells a very clear story. They avoid confrontation. They abandon promising hunts. They keep their distance from adult males entirely. Something in their long collective memory, passed down through generations of learning within pods, tells them this is a target that does not pay off. This is a fight where the winner still loses. In the ocean, that is what fear actually looks like. Not panic, not flight, just quiet, consistent avoidance. The kind of respect that comes from calculation rather than emotion. And by that definition, yes, orcas absolutely respect adult sperm whales. They may even fear them in the only way an apex predator can fear anything, not with a racing heart, but with a cold, careful decision to be somewhere else. The sperm whale wins without needing to hunt back. It wins by being what it is, by standing still when others run, by facing forward when others turn away, by carrying inside it a history so violent that the modern ocean, with all its coordinated killers, is not enough to break its calm. So the next time you see a documentary showing an orca pod dominating the sea, remember that there are still shapes in the deep they will not touch, not because they cannot, but because they have learned, over generations, that some giants are not worth the price. Now we want to hear from you. Which part of the sperm whale's defense surprised you the most? Was it the battering ram head that sank a wooden ship in 1820? Was it the rotating tail fortress that protects their young? Was it the deep diving escape into a world orcas cannot enter? Or was it the realization that this animal is essentially a walking survivor of an age filled with monsters we will never see alive? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read them, and we would love to know what stood out to you. If this dive into the deep gave you something new to think about, tap that like button and hit subscribe so you do not miss the next mystery we unpack. There is still so much moving down there in the dark, and we are only just starting to understand what the ocean has been hiding all along. See you on the next descent.